So I made a decision a couple weeks ago that a couple people told me was a bad idea and that it wasn't going to work. I decided that I was just not going to be burned out anymore. I've dealt with hobby burnout for like 2 years at this point, and it got to the point where, over the past month or so, I started thinking maybe I should just keep 2 or 3 of my favorite dolls and sell off the rest. A lot of them have been in the closet for almost a year now, so it wouldn't really be that big of a difference. I'd just be getting rid of what's put away and a couple of the ones that are out on the shelf. But then I started thinking, and I realized that through the years that I've been in the doll hobby, most of the time when I see people hit burnout, that's what they do. They quit, they disappear. And if they ever come back, it's because the hobby has changed enough for things to feel new and fresh and different. And I've spoken before about that pursuit of newness and the effect I knew it was having on my hobby burnout. And it wasn't something that I was going to be able to recapture because eventually you've just done everything that there is to do and it can't be new again. So this took me on kind of a weird, long journey of studying what burnout is, and creative burnout, which is what hobby burnout kind of is most similar to occupational burnout. And one of the cures that's suggested for that is changing jobs. So that's often why you see people drop out and pursue different hobbies instead. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get my spark back, and I felt like it was possible, so I just decided I was gonna fix it. And that was when I kind of realized that the problem is actually this plateau. And at some point you reach a plateau where you cannot advance your skills as fast as you want to, and it becomes like a greater energy expense that you're trying to get better and better at something, but you're not seeing any progress. And that is what drives people into a state of burnout. It's when your energy expenditure surpasses your energy reserves. And everybody always tells you at that point to rest, but the longer that I have been resting and staying away from the hobby, the less I care about it. So that obviously wasn't going to work. As I was reading about occupational burnout, because there are no real studies on creative burnout, I read that it's a lot more similar to depression than anything else. And I don't know about you, but anytime I'm dealing with depression, just kind of sitting around, sleeping more, playing more video games, trying to relax, actually makes me feel worse. So I decided what I really probably needed was momentum, and I figured I would make that for myself. So then I started taking stock of everything that I felt was holding me back and keeping me stuck in one place so that I didn't feel like I had any momentum, I didn't feel like I had any progress. And I realized that I had way too much craft stuff, and that's pretty typical for, somebody who worked at a craft supply store. And also through the years, people had given me a lot of stuff. So I decided I was going to start sorting things out, and I had a box full of little sewing odds and ends that I had been meaning to sort out forever that had just been sitting in my studio, and I dumped it out, and I quickly realized it was going to be a much bigger job than what I originally thought. I had so much fabric that it had spilled off of 3 shelves, and there were 2 totes full, and there was still a huge pile on the floor that I did not have space for. So I kind of took inventory of my studio, and I realized I needed to cut my collection of fabrics by probably 2/3, and all the rest of my craft supplies needed to be cut in half. And after that, then maybe I would feel a little bit better about the state of things, just the general overwhelm that had developed in my studio and was holding me back. I shared this theory of just needing momentum instead of rest with a couple of people, and they agreed with me and encouraged me to give it a try, so I figured I would take 2 weeks and see if I could fix my burnout, and you know what? It actually worked. It worked. So I'm going to show you some little vloggy bits that I recorded while I was cleaning up my studio and share some of my thoughts that developed while I was cleaning the studio, because having time to think about how to get that momentum back and fix the things that I felt were holding me back, that all came while I was cleaning, and just having that time to think while I was sorting and organizing and getting rid of things made a huge difference. So we're going to go through that, and then I am going to give you a little quick tour of the finished room. So what I've done so far is organize this shelf. I took out a bunch of like ribbons and things and put them into that box right there. And then I've got cuts of fabric, and I have drastically culled fabric, and it still is not enough. I need to really reduce this too. And then over here, I've made some changes. I removed what used to be there. I think I'm going to take these modular cubes and put them where that black file cabinet is. Right now that's where my sewing patterns are stored, and I think I'm going, there's like loose ones on the floor there. I think I am going to change that so that that'll be in there, because those drawers, I can just like pull them out completely whenever I'm using them. And then the things that I'm going to ultimately store in this one, I don't need frequently. So that'll be better for storing under there. And I'm thinking about moving my big shelf over here, replacing the black shelf with one of my IKEA Calyx shelves that I have over here. I haven't cleaned that one off yet. But if I lay it on its side, it'll be like 3x4, so it'll be back behind this a little bit, but that'll leave me a gap back here for like tall bolts of fabric. So then this one, I guess, would go over here where this currently is, but I need to get table legs because my table only has 2 legs. It's attached to the Calyx shelf unit, and this is the only part of my studio that's wide open enough for me to be able to set up all of my filming stuff, like my lights. Look at this. I'm cleaning, and while I'm cleaning, I found the box for my MacBook Air that I bought in 2017. I have had this laptop. It's been my writing laptop for 8 years now. I probably don't need the box anymore. Finding the box for my writing laptop really reminded me of how during like my peak era, I was spending so much time working on preparing my epic fantasy series, The Snake's Blood Saga, for publication. That was published in 2020, and it was kind of like this big crowning moment where all of my hard work of the past few years had come together, and it was such a great celebratory moment. And over the past few years, as I've struggled with my health, I didn't really have the time to celebrate all the books that I was writing. My main priority was just finishing everything that I had started and making sure that it got out, because I didn't want to leave any series unfinished. When I was writing Snake's Blood, every book had such a great launch. I had all these extras. I had all kinds of like stickers and bookmarks and little like map prints and character artwork that went with the books. And none of my other books had that, and I really felt like I missed out. And that really helped me connect that one of the things that was contributing to that plateau that felt like no momentum was that I hadn't had any moments to really celebrate any of those victories. So much of my creativity is interconnected. It's like I have the dolls, but they're all book characters, and all the things that I want to make are related to my stories. Over time, I've tried to compartmentalize that and make sure that people can just see like one facet of it if that's all that they're interested in, but realistically, that's just not going to work for the kind of creating that I do, because everything is so closely intertwined, and I need to just let it be intertwined. Since I recently finished my epic fantasy series Spectrum Legacy, I told a friend that I wanted to backtrack and start making sure all of my books were available in hardcover format, because hardcover was not an option for most indie authors when I started publishing. My friend suggested that I should use the launch of those hardcover editions as that celebratory moment that I didn't get, and start building up some momentum and do all the little things that I didn't get to do with my later series that I got to do with Snake's Blood. So for this round of culling, this is the fabric that is going in my box. At this point, I've probably given away about 150 pounds of fabric, and there is still more to go through. So I'm going to refold all of this, go through my whites, and then I'm going to start pulling fabric off the shelf in the other room to sort through that the same way and see if I can keep culling. I wasn't totally sure how to handle a relaunch, because doing all the little extras is actually like really expensive, And since I haven't been creating as much lately, I haven't been doing as many commissions or anything like that, so my income has been down, and affording the production of all the little extras and the new edition of the book has been really challenging. So my friend suggested, why not do a Kickstarter for the hardcover edition that lets you create that edition of the book and all of the little extras that go with it. And that ends up being like a great new launch opportunity because it's really highlighting the new version of the book. And because the book itself is already done and polished and being put out in a new format, it's really low risk. So I can set the funding goal really low, and that way it's really likely to come to fruition. And that seemed like a good idea, so I'm going to give it a try. I am launching the first campaign for my fantasy romance, The Assassin's Bride, at the end of August, because that was the first book that didn't really get the launch that I wanted. But after I started putting things together, like drawing the stickers and the bookmarks, and thinking about how I would create these characters as dolls if I have the time or inclination, that was when the creative spark really started coming back, because I was finally letting all of my creativity mesh together the way that it always naturally has, and the way that it was doing back prior to my health issues. And that started building all of the momentum that I knew I was missing. And that was when the burnout that I'd been struggling with for the past 2 years finally started to evaporate. You know, at this point, this is actually fabric that I've already gone through once before, and this is what made it through the first round of cuts. And the longer I do this, the easier it's getting to look at it and go, you know, I just don't think that I'm actually going to use that. And that feels pretty good. Like here I already decided that I was going to keep some reds, so I know I don't need this one, and that makes it really easy to let go. There's also a lot of colors like this that are not really my taste, and I find like the yellows and bright oranges and stuff, I don't really use those, so there's no reason for me to keep them. Shelf cleaned off. Time for me to put everything back where it goes. And the worst part of all this is that I have not even mentioned our central air conditioning is having a problem. We're going to have to replace the entire unit. So like I am up here, I have no air conditioning. It's like 90 degrees in this room. And the whole time I'm just thinking, boy, it sure would be nice if we could get that new AC unit, but that's gonna be like a $10,000 replacement. I have made some very poor life decisions here. I'm gonna tell you a secret. I actually hate the black shelf. I've always hated the black shelf. The only reason that I have the black shelf in here is I needed a shelf and we had a black one. And I mentioned it to my husband and he said he needs a black shelf for his studio, because it's like I have my studio upstairs and he has a room downstairs that he gets to use as like his gym workout / comic studio, and he needs a shelf for in there, and he said he'll take this one and he'll buy me a white one to replace it, which I'm really excited about, but that probably needs to wait until after the air conditioning thing because that's really expensive. And now this huge basket of fabric I pulled off the black shelf gets to go into the white shelf in its new home. And now it is another day. I am excited to be working on all of this. I'm excited to be up here in my studio. It's a little bit gray outside, but I'm gonna give you a quick tour and let you see what the room looks like now. So right when you first come in the door, this is the tabletop that used to be connected to my shelf. I covered it with fresh contact paper and like a wood grain finish just to liven things up and do things a little bit differently. I've got my tripod set up there now and one of my umbrella lights, but there's plenty of space around the table to set up my overhead camera mount if I need that, or add more lights. This room has always been really dark, poorly lit, even after we put in a new light fixture, so having the good lights is a must. I didn't really do a lot with my 3D printing station over here, it just kind of is. But I've got like some extra rolls of vinyl in there, and this shelf is where all of my various tools are. Down on the bottom is my sewing patterns, but then also some casting supplies right next to it. There's my airbrush booth, unfinished projects, like beads and wire and little accessories like that, all kinds of sculpting tools, sanding tools, eye making stuff. I've got like boxes with my Dremels, with Nendoroid parts, random doll parts that I've cast or created. And then up toward the top, there's just like a couple little decorative odds and ends, but also those baskets of like ribbons and trims and laces. And then there's like also patterns and packaging materials, just like random things that I didn't really have a good spot for, but they work really well here. Now that I have more space around the window, I'm thinking about putting up some curtains, maybe like some sheer curtains, or I might see if I can get some more flowers and hang some flowers like down the sides or something, just to make it a little more dreamy. I added these strip light LEDs around the room just to try to add a little more ambient brightness, just because of the light issues in here. And at first I didn't like it, but I really like it now. I got rid of some old expired paints off of my shelves, but I still have some more to do. This is still my main sewing station, but it has been cleaned up a lot. I've got a ring light here for extra lighting. And then when I come around the corner here, the file cabinet has been replaced in the corner, and that's just like paper crafting stuff that I don't use super frequently. There's my basket of unfinished projects that I will be tackling soon as a major project to share. A lot of that is stuff that I had made specifically for tutorials, and it's not things that I would typically use for my own dolls. So there's not really a need for me to keep it, and I'll probably just be like finishing a lot of those pieces and selling them off kind of inexpensively. There's a lot of things like pants for SID. This was like a test piece, and it really just needs like a snap at the fly to hold it shut, and then these are perfectly serviceable. So then there's like a bunch of shirts that need buttons and things like that, just little finishing things, and then a couple things that were outfits for my dolls that I need to mend. Over here I rearranged some of these drawers to contain things like my stamp making supplies with my silhouette mint. And then down on the bottom is things for like vinyl cutting and making custom shirts and things like that, because now that I have like heat press vinyl things, I can make decorative like slogans and logos and stuff that can go on doll shirts. So I'm looking forward to that, but you know, also for me. But a lot of what's in here is still sewing supplies, just a little bit more organized than it was. I decided to have my silhouette cameo out and ready to hook up to my laptop all the time. I think this is going to make fulfillment for like Kickstarter extras of making my stickers and things like that a lot easier, but I also really like making stickers frequently, so it makes sense to have it out all the time. My art supplies moved over here to this shelf, and I've got some of my other little dolls out on display. I've got like all my face-up stuff over here in this area, and then there's actually a lot of space freed up on these shelves, and there's like a couple bins here for scrap materials, and then this is all of the fabric that I kept, except there is one tote that is put away in the closet. I'm really happy having pared down my fabric just to this much. This is all fabric that I really love, that I think suits my collection well, that I really see myself using in the next year. Not a whole lot changed in this spot. There's still my Pookie's little bakery and shop and things over there, and one of my sewing machines I put away over here to store because I don't see myself using it very frequently. I mostly just use my computerized machine now. And then these bins here are like my extra doll accessories and clothing and things like that. So, and then there's just the dolls on the shelves, and you'll have to excuse Rune because, you know, like I said, he is almost always nude because since he is dyed, he stains very, very easily, and it is very difficult to remove staining because it'll take off the dye as well. But I have a little bit of space. I'm going to have space anyway on my shelves after I dress everybody up nicely. I'm going to be doing some doll dress up. If you want to see that, let me know. But I think there's plenty of space for me to get some of my dolls out that have been put away for, gosh, almost a year now, and I'm really looking forward to getting them out, dressing them up, and making some new outfits. But yeah, this is how things look now. This is my creative space, my inspiring studio for the coming year. If you have any questions or you want to see anything in more detail, let me know and I will do my best to answer. In the midst of this all, my Jones soda cap fortune was very on point. And it says, sometimes a new perception can make a major difference. It's true.